In today's episode, we are going to go over 5 key takeaways our students have shared with us when it comes to their failed swim lesson attempts at their local Learn to Swim programs.
What is going on, everyone? My name is Coach Jeff.
And I'm Coach Meredith.
And we are Master Adult Swim Instructors and the founders of Caribe Swim. It is our mission and passion in life to help teach you how to swim without fear and with 100% confidence. And I'm so excited about today's conversation. We are going to break down a beautiful discussion that we had with Dr. Erica Liggins. Dr. Liggins is a doctor of psychology. She spent her entire life not knowing how to swim and in a really paralyzing, fearful state when it came to being around water. And in that interview, she discusses her experience hiring a local swim program and some of the shortcomings of that program, and then how that was different from her experience learning to swim virtually with on-demand adult learn to swim program. And so in today's conversation, we're just going to break that down into 5 key takeaways that we think you would benefit from before hiring your local swim program. Ready to dive in?
Let's dive in.
All right. So number 1, and I think one of the biggest takeaways, is that Dr. Liggins' swim program wasn't aware of who she was and her swimming background before she stepped foot onto the pool deck. And as professionals who have owned a swim school for 11, 12 years, we analyze this as the lack of an onboarding program, both at the company level and at the swim instructor level, so that the company and instructor are aware of her background, any fear, anxiety, tension, apprehension that she has before she arrives on day 1 of her swim program. So let's talk about why that's so important. What is one of the key takeaways?
One of the biggest key takeaways to lacking an onboarding process is that the student, first of all, not felt known or welcome, but also doesn't have any familiarity with their swim instructor or their experience either. I think maybe a good example for this would be like if you go to a gym and you know that you want to hire a personal trainer, you're usually going to sit down, go through an assessment, look over your goals. Where are you at? You know, do you have any injuries? Like, there's so many moving parts when it comes to working with someone, especially in an area that requires trust and rapport, and to not have an onboarding program to establish that rapport.
It's a miss.
It's a miss. It's a big miss.
Not to mention, what are the qualifications of the instructor? Your example is a great one. Like, if I'm hiring someone as a trainer, I want to know what their background is, what their experience level is, how qualified are they to be able to assist me with my particular unique skill set and my particular and unique goals that I'm looking to accomplish in my time horizon. And what we learned from the conversation with Dr. Liggins is that when she showed up to swim lesson number 1, her instructor literally said, "You don't have fear, do you?"
Instructors are very lovely, nice people. Okay, this is nothing personal. But I get in and she's like, "Okay, so, have you done classes before?" I'm like, "Not really. I'm new to all this." And she's like, "Okay, but you're not afraid of the water, right? Like, no fear, no nothing." Now, when someone asks you a question like that, like, you're not afraid.
Right.
Of course you're going to be like, "Oh, not really." Right? Because you're embarrassed already.
And this to me is a major, major red flag. And it's something that I want you guys at home to prepare for prior to your first lesson. Meaning, I want you to ask the question, what qualifications does my particular swim instructor have? All right, this is massively important. It's a simple question to ask. And beyond what we just discussed, here's another kind of inside tip as to why that's so important. And I promise no swim program is going to tell you this, but many swim programs have no experience required when hiring a swim instructor that's in the water with either your kids or with you. And so you want to find out what that experience level is so that, no offense, you don't have a swim instructor that has no experience. Because now what we're running into is a high fear adult with an instructor that potentially has no or limited experience, and that is not a relationship that's going to be conducive to your success, especially as an adult. Now, training programs, and I know I'm rambling here, but training programs for kids can help get inexperienced instructors up to a place where they have the ability to help kids progress in curriculum. Now, foundationally, that has more to do with just the kids getting exposure in the water, less to do with the skill level of a particular instructor. That's a conversation for another day. But when it relates to your fear level in the water as an adult, this is much different. It requires a completely different set of skills. And to have potentially an instructor that doesn't have experience is not a good way to start out the program. How would you feel if you showed up for your first swim lesson and a swim instructor didn't know who you were, didn't know your background, and literally said to you, "You don't have any fear, do you?"
I can speak in terms of something I can relate to more, and I think it is in alignment with what we're talking about. I used to have, as you know, a great fear of open water and
In the ocean.
Yes, and sharks and things. And I know for a fact that if I were to hire someone to help me overcome that fear to go out swimming in the ocean, I would need to know what their background is. Are they in a position where if something happened, where fear overcame me, are they going to be able to get us into a safe position so that I don't hurt myself or others? What is their background so that I can feel safe and secure so that that can avoid that situation from happening? Just knowing you're with someone you can trust can alleviate so much of that. And for someone to presumptively say, you know, oh, you don't have any fear, well, that's really quite an assumption.
If they were to say that to a child, most likely the answer is going to be yes, a child does not have fear, or they don't have reinforced fear. Maybe that's even a better way of saying it. But that's a completely different experience than an adult who's 30, 40, 50, 60, sometimes 70 years old, that has maybe had a traumatic experience as a child, maybe not. In the case of Dr. Liggins, her parents didn't know how to swim, and the fear that they carried around transferred to her. And so when she walked into the pool deck on the first day, she did have paralyzing fear. She just describes that in the interview, which if you haven't watched it, I'll link it up here. Highly recommend you watching the entire hour. And fear and water don't mix. There's a number of reasons for this. It's foundationally one of the main reasons why adult swimming lessons have a 70% failure rate. When we enter or we bring unaddressed fear into the water with us, it creates tension in our bodies. Tension in our bodies makes us more dense in the water. More density in the water means we have to work harder to accomplish, let's say we're going from point A to point B, right? And that makes us more tired. Now we're in a very dangerous perpetual loop of fatigue and overexertion. And it's very important that we avoid that. So bringing this all the way back to the beginning, your program should have a rock solid onboarding program. They should ask you questions like, what's your background? What's your experience level? Do you have fear? Have you tried to learn to swim before? And pair that with, this is your instructor. This is their background. Here's how many adults they've helped overcome fear. And to give you an idea, we've taught over 5,000 adults how to overcome their fear of the water and have a completely transformative experience and be able to swim without fear and with 100% confidence. That's the kind of experience level I hope that you're able to hire when looking to learn to swim for the first time.
So yes, if you are checking out your local Learn to Swim program because you are just tired of living without water experiences, or you're just tired of living with this fear, you just want to get through it, get over it, and you're looking to sign up, please, if they don't have an onboarding process, please ask them a few questions like, do you work with adults with fear? What is your process? If the answer to that is yes. If they say, oh, we just put you in a class with everyone else and there is no different process, that program is most likely not going to work for you. And I promise you, swim schools very rarely refund money. So please be selective before handing that information over because you will be stuck with that purchase whether or not you attend. And yeah, make sure you understand how they quantify what is a successful student, as well as get to know your instructor's background.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. All right. Takeaway number 2 from that interview is you have to be aware the class size that you are going to have for your swim lessons. And swim programs are notorious for class sizes that do not set you up for success, that are meant to be beneficial for the swim school from a financial standpoint and not beneficial for you from a learning standpoint. So let's talk about Dr. Liggins' experience first, and then we'll talk about our experience in the industry from having a swim school for 12 years.
So I recall Dr. Liggins mentioned that there were 3 non-swimmers to 1 swim instructor in her class for a 30-minute lesson period.
This is another problem. This class actually is better than most in terms of adult classes in terms of ratio, because there's only 3 adults to 1 instructor, which I would actually later learn that's actually good for some classes.
And I think that detail really matters because, for the industry, 3 to 1 is not bad. it's actually probably up there with the best you can find. But at the end of the day, that is still only 10 minutes per swimmer with the instructor.
Yeah, when we break down how long each individual swimmer has in a one-on-one setting with that respective instructor, 3 swimmers to one instructor, 30-minute class means everyone has 10 minutes. Now, there are a number of reasons why having 3 swimmers in the class, in our opinion, is still too high. Number one is every adult is going to come into that program with a different foundation, a different background, experience level, a different level of fear. And that means that that class is going to be tricky to manage for the instructor. And what ends up happening is it becomes very challenging for each respective adult in that class to focus on their own individual rate of progression. Because as a society, we have been trained to compare ourselves to everyone else.
Yes.
And it seems to happen in abundance in the water. And it looks like this. Yeah. And this happened in Dr. Ligon's class. She describes this to a T, which is she had a lot of fear, and the swimmer that she was paired with in the water could already swim across the pool.
But the other person was so much more advanced. So I don't understand things, again, what was said on paper around there's different levels, and if you're at this level, then you go on. That was not what was happening in practice. So again, I'm standing there, body fully activated, ruminating thoughts. I'm feeling bad about myself, feeling afraid. And I see this other woman who is literally swimming up and down the pool, working on her kicking, just so much more advanced than where I was.
And this was in a beginner class. This was supposed to be level 1. This was supposed to be with other students on her same progress level, and that just was not the case.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening in a situation like that? Well, Dr. Liggins starts thinking that, one, she's not very good, doesn't help build her confidence, and instead of focusing inward on her state of relaxation, on any of the technique that she would be trying to use in the water, she's already thinking, well, I'm not as good as that other swimmer. And I don't think that's a unique experience to Dr. Liggins. I think, we've taught over 5,000 adults how to swim, and it's something that we notice all the time.
Even to the extent where couples would come and take our course, we would ask them to separate from each other and to really try to do the process individually, because what we found, everyone progresses in a very unique way. Your learn to swim experience is completely unique to you and what you are going through and how you are learning and how you are receptive to the program. It has absolutely nothing to do with where anyone else is at.
100%. And so to bring this point all the way back, professionally speaking, I think having a private experience, I think, is optimal. Right? That's the best. And that's always going to be met with the highest cost.
Yes.
So we have to be aware of that. And so I think if you can get into the smallest class size possible, if you are intent on hiring your local swim program, but definitely beware of class sizes that are 4 swimmers to 1 instructor or higher. And a lot of programs that we've heard of all across the United States have class sizes of up to 10 adults or more for 1 instructor. And I think that just is a recipe for disaster. So definitely be aware of that.
And if disaster does not occur in that swim lesson, certainly progress is very slow. Dr. Liggins mentioned that the people who she knew, and this is not the first time we have heard this, the people she knew who continued going through the program, they were in that program for years. And these classes might even appear inexpensive or at least at minimum affordable. The issue is they're locking you in for a process that really shouldn't take more than a few months, even for the highest fear people, even aquaphobia level. These other students have been at their swim program for years.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why that is, and this is key takeaway number 3, is that you need to be aware of the length of time that your swim class is. So Dr. Liggins described hers as being 30 minutes long once a week.
But still not enough, because this class is 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And time has to be split between 3 adults.
Now, as she pointed out, there's a key process in fear cessation called habituation. In our program here at Create-Based Swim, we call that systematic desensitization, but that's just the body's ability to start to relax and get used to the experience. How Dr. Liggins describes it is, if you ever watch a horror film, on the first time you watch it, you are shocked at everything that happens, right? You jump out of your seat at every little movement, but you watch it 2, 3, 4 times, your body doesn't react the same way. That's habituation. The body works the same way and the nervous system works the same way with learning how to swim, especially with our high fear adults. So in class 1, you can expect to come in and be very tense, rigid, nervous. And as you continue to gain exposure, relaxed exposure to the water, we go through a number of relaxation strategies in our community with our on-demand Learn to Swim program for adults. More information on that, link in the description below. But basically, what that means is that you need as much exposure as possible to start to desensitize the body. And 30 minutes once a week is not going to do that. You need a minimum of 1 hour, as she described.
Absolute minimum 1 hour. So if we break that down, applying Kaufman's principle to needing 20 hours of exposure, if we have one swim class that's 30 minutes long once a week, we're only getting 2 hours a month. We're going to need to be in swim lessons for at least almost a year, 10 months. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's just to meet the minimum threshold too.
Yeah.
And this is, obviously, everyone is unique. Some people will learn quicker, some will take much longer. A lot of that depends on consistency, your fear level, background. Have you ever tried before? Can you get more exposure than that in between your swim lessons, what have you? But long story short, it's absolutely essential that your program on a weekly basis is longer than 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
With our program, it's 2 hours. And as you were saying, that might sound like a lot of time if you're thinking about it from a rigorous output perspective. But that's not how the program is, and it's not how it should be when you're learning how to swim. You should attempt a skill, take some time, reflect on it, relax, and then attempt that skill again. Or if you're completely ready, move on to the next skill. It's not something where you're swimming laps for 2 hours right up front. So it's not nearly as rigorous as it sounds, but it's extremely important to help with the habituation and desensitization of the nervous system. So point number 3, make sure your swim program is a minimum of 1 hour long. Point number 4, and this blows my mind every time I hear another adult tell me about this, they have no process for fear cessation, okay? So here's what that means, and this is how Dr. Liggins described this too. Immediately on session 1, not only do they say, hey, you don't have fear, do you, right? You don't have fear, but immediately you're in the water.
Can I tell you about how the class went? Because it was terrible. So we get to the other end of the pool, and I am fully activated. My nervous system is not okay. I am not fully okay, but I'm putting on a brave face, and she hands me a kickboard. That's what they're called, right? That little foam thing. And she's like, okay, we're going to work on kicking. So right to technique. Right away.
In your swimming technique. And in her case, they immediately gave her a kickboard and said, hey, learn how to kick. Majorly problematic. From a kicking perspective, when we have tension, we can't kick properly because our foot is flexed and our toe isn't pointed. But that's neither here nor there. The bigger issue there is we can't learn how to relax in the water, one, by being told to relax, which is, the key statement by most swim instructors.
Just relax.
Just relax.
You need to relax.
As if I would, I'll be relaxed if I could be relaxed, but I'm terrified, so I can't, right? But beyond that, there's no process to help relax the central nervous system or habituate. In our program, we go through an intentional relaxation process that includes 4 key steps. Number 1 is mindfulness meditation before every swim program, and we help you do that at home as well.
Breathing.
Breathing. So we do 2 different types of breathing. We'll teach you how to take a deep diaphragmatic breath, which we'll then use in a process of breathing called box breathing, which helps greatly relax the central nervous system.
And it engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which is adults who are afraid of the water are engaged in some form of fight or flight. Their cortisol is going up, their heart is beating, like all these things that create very real physiological responses that change our buoyancy. They change all of the properties of how we interact in the water.
Absolutely. And then number 4 is visualization, which is kind of another form of mindfulness where we're thinking about the outcome that we're looking to produce before we actually get in the water to try to produce that outcome. And it's a great way to help realize our fear levels. Maybe if you're an adult that isn't aware that you have fear and we go through a visual meditation, your body tends to react the same way when you're visualizing as it would if you were actually in the water.
It does, and that is such a powerful tool to know that before going and doing it. All of this is coming up, it's fresh, it's new, and when even asked questions, they might not really know that that's the thing that's bothering them, but being able to visualize it first and then notice, where's the tension coming from? What thought is giving us this much distress? And it's so important to experience that on dry land before ever putting yourself in a situation where we can react and it can become dangerous. We want to deal with these feelings in a completely safe place.
And key takeaway number 5 is that it tends to be tricky logistically for many in-person programs. So how Dr. Liggins described her experience with the logistics of her swim program were, number 1, the closest programs to her were sold out, so she was put on a wait list. So she had to drive over 30 minutes one way, which makes the commitment substantially larger.
Monumental.
When we're talking about especially working families that may have kids, like trying to find an extra minimum 2 hours during the week to go and take swim lessons probably isn't going to happen for the average family.
I went to go sign up. I'm searching for places. And first of all, I have just a hard time finding places that have openings. That was a huge problem. Also, the cost, I was like, okay. Thankfully, as a working professional, I have the means to be able to pay for it, but I could see that being a barrier for people. And then I had to actually get on some waiting lists for the areas or the classes that were near me, because I went with a company that has many locations actually, but again, so full. And the ones that were near me, totally full. So then I had to drive over 30 minutes to get there. Now, what happens if I didn't have a car? Gas is difficult to pay for. I mean, think about that. Going a few times a week, that's a lot. And imagine too, if you have young kids, there's just a lot of barriers.
And then when we start to include the cost of these programs and we look at the cost long term of how much we're actually spending, it just makes it logistically difficult for the average adult to learn how to swim. So what do we do about the logistical problems that we just mentioned with a lot of programs are sold out, with wait lists, you got to drive a long ways, they're expensive. And this is where our Caribe swim community really shines through. This is your first time hearing about our community. We are launching it June 1st, 2024. So depending on when you're watching this video, it's either you can get on a wait list or we've just launched it. But here are the highlights of our program. Number 1, we've taught over 5,000 adults how to swim virtually. And it is just the right way to teach you how to swim. 1, it's self-paced. 2, you get to take it at any pool that's convenient for you, at any time that's convenient for you. We teach you the relaxation strategies that you will use outside of the water first before ever stepping foot in the water. And then we teach you the process on how to maintain that state of relaxation throughout the entire experience while you're learning to swim. And you get the benefit of, as we mentioned, watching those videos anytime you want. There are many, many, many other community members who are at your pace, who have gone through the adult learn to swim process that can give you tips and tricks on how to overcome any plateaus that you might reach. And we have a minimum once a week Q&A live with me and Coach Meredith that you can attend to get all of your questions answered. Foundationally, in our experience, it's just the right way to learn how to swim. Now, to recap, here are the 5 shortcomings Dr. Liggins described that we just covered in this video. Number 1, watch out for swim programs not having an onboarding program. Number 2, make sure you're aware of the student to teacher ratio in the class. Number 3, check out how long the swim program is and make sure it's a minimum of 1 hour. Better to be 2 hours, but good luck finding a program that's got a 2-hour long swim class. Number 4 is you need to find a program that has fear cessation built into it, meaning they have strategies. It is not just in the water technique like kicking, swim freestyle, swim backstroke. And number 5, the logistics of in-person swim lessons are just tricky, and it's a lot easier now that we have a virtual way of learning how to swim. Check out that link in the description below. Conclude it with this. I believe that every adult can and should learn how to swim, regardless of how the narrative is played out inside of this video. I do think that in-person swim lessons try to do a great job, and I think there are some great in-person adult swim lesson programs. And if you are interested in learning how to swim without fear and with 100% confidence, I'd be honored if you would just check out our program. Link is in the description below. Final thoughts?
I can't wait to see you there.
Thank you guys for joining us. See you in the next video.